Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Were you entertained? Well, you're about to be. This is Sports Tonight Live, and this is the World Football Show. I'll be your host for today, and I'm Mina Rzouki, and I'm joined by my fabulous co-pilot for the day, Raphael Honigstein. How are you, Raphael?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm okay. Still suffering from a cough. Are you all right now?
Just a little bit.
Just a tad. Well, there was some excellent international fixtures yesterday, if you saw them, and if you didn't see the rather dull Netherlands versus Germany.
I did, unfortunately, but yeah, let's defer that talk and start with something a bit more exciting.
Let's start with something more exciting, and of course, what could be more exciting than Sweden? What is it with them scoring 4 goals, and did Zlatan just prove that there's no one better than him except for maybe Ronaldo and Messi?
That's many questions in one.
Okay, I thought you were about to say no.
Sweden look incredible, especially when they kind of go very direct once they're are being led by 1 or 2 goals. It's I wouldn't say history repeated itself, but it was a similar story to the 4-4 because England, despite not really convincing, had a bit of control in the game. I mean, they were leading twice, but then Sweden in sort of the last 30 minutes or so went very, very direct, and England couldn't handle it, which is really unusual and strange if you think what kind of back four and Joe Hart there. They should have been able to deal with that a lot better than they did. But I mean, Ibrahimovic obviously was spectacular. He was in the mood, and he's finally done the thing that is the true mark of every great player in the world. He scored against an English team.
Oh.
So now his last doubt has disappeared.
Banished.
But he's back to another problem, which is that the accusation that he only turns out against really terrible teams, and is a flat track bully.
It's only a friendly, right? It seems there's nothing he can do. We've got Daniel Christopherson with us, and he was actually there at the match, and he writes for Sports Expressen. Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Hello. I'm fine.
Right. So that's 4 assists when he was playing for PSG in the Champions League, and it's 4 goals against England. Now, surely this should show that this is one of the greatest footballers of the modern era.
Yes, we start to get a bit used to it. Zlatan has faced us with goals, not like this, but some amazing things they have done. Not just this season, and all the years he has been playing, so it was a fantastic goal.
Okay, so tell us about this. Do you think this was perhaps a bad English side full of inexperienced players who didn't defend as well as perhaps England knows how to defend?
Yeah, of course. They made a lot of changes in the second half, so the match wasn't kind of the best. But if you score goals like that, have to be on the top of the world. Maybe it's just Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo who can do things like that, and Zlatan.
Daniel, how was it? How was the response in Sweden when he was asked after the game? How would you rate your performances for Sweden from 1 to 10? And he said 10. I mean, on the back of this performance, people would agree with him. But has he really always performed at 10 out of 10 for Sweden over all these years?
No, he hasn't. Because it was funny because just 1 year ago, it was many supporters of Sweden that said that the Swedish national team was better without Zlatan. So I think he has got them some answers now. So that's the funny thing. He hasn't played this good in the national team all the matches, but in the big matches he has shown that his qualities and that he is one of the greatest players in the world.
Daniel, I'm going to have to let you go because the sound quality is not very good. Barely hear you, so we will give you a call back once we get our technical difficulties rearranged. But speaking to what you think, he rated himself 10. I mean, do you blame
very unlike Zlatan to blow his own trumpet.
Gerard said he only rated himself at about a 6 or a 7, and of course Zlatan came out and said that. But do you not think that I mean, everyone seems to dislike him. Do you think the fact that he is so confident, a la Ronaldo, is what makes people sort of not big him up? Let's just say.
Confidence is one thing. I think arrogance is another. And
doesn't he have the right to be arrogant?
He might have the right, but it's still his choice. And there are people, all sorts of people have the right to be arrogant, but chose to be humble still, and chose to be much more sociable and don't always have to put themselves into the limelight. And I think Cristiano Ronaldo this week in a CNN interview talked about an image problem, which perhaps has held him back when it comes to individual awards like the Ballon d'Or. Now, you know, if you want to talk about Ibrahimovic having a shot, I don't think he has, because, you know, he is seen by too many people as someone who's only playing his own very individual game. Brilliant when it comes off. I think less brilliant for the rest of the team when it doesn't, because he is a guy who does what's right for Zlatan, not always what's right for the team.
One-man team is better without their one man, some people say. Well, he is always in a team that sort of needs to go through him to succeed. But let's talk a little bit about England. There were so many youngsters and so many new people in there, and some of them did well, and some of them perhaps, you know, Shawcross comes to mind, who didn't really have the best night for the English debut. Do you think that there's something to look at, any positives to take home?
Very difficult. I think that, I mean, the big negative was really Joe Hart's performance. I mean, he's a guy who's been hyped so much over the Euros and also beginning of the season again, even though he's not having actually a good season if you look at some of the mistakes he made in the Champions League. Certainly at Real Madrid, he had a great game against Dortmund, but, you know, these things have been offset with slightly wobbly performances. And this one, I think every single goal, you can look at him and say, you know, he could have done a lot better. And that I think that is a worry, because in Joe Hart, after, I hasten to say decades, but many, many years of not having very capable keepers, there is someone who everyone had agreed would, you know, would have these two gloves for a considerable time and would at least solve one chronic problem for England.
Exactly.
And now you wonder whether he is the solution after all. Apart from that, I think it was interesting to see players like Raheem Sterling and Wilfried Zaha involved. I'm not sure it's always a good idea to call up players this young on the back of so little experience. I mean, Wilfried Zaha has great experience, of course, but not in the top flight. And Raheem Sterling is just having his breakthrough season. And with the way things work in England sometimes, I think these kind of players can become too big too soon. We've seen it in the past, perhaps, with Walcott. Even maybe Oxlade-Chamberlain is suffering from a different problem. And if it weren't for Jamaica in the background, you know, making offers, etc., I think we would have perhaps seen them being called up a lot later. But because there was a need... It's
a need of trying to get them in there as quickly as possible, so let's just call them up.
Correct. It was it was a political decision. It was an easy decision, because people always like to see young players
especially in a time when it doesn't really matter,
I'm not sure it's a good thing for them going forward to be called up so early.
Well, we do have Daniel back on the phone. So, Daniel, just a parting question, really. You were finishing off about how this fixture was looked at in Sweden and what the reaction was over there. So, can you go back to answering that question for us?
Yes. The reaction here has been fantastic, and we have said that we're used to that Zlatan gives us this amazing goals. He's done it against Hungary, against France in the European Championship last summer, but for 1 year ago, the Swedish supporters was questioning him, and he didn't perform so well, and they even say that the national team was better without Zlatan. But I think they will know better now.
Yeah.
Do you think things have changed because he's adapted his game a little bit? I mean, last season already he started for Milan in a deeper position that's basically continued more or less at Paris Saint-Germain. And even for Sweden, he's played a little bit deeper, perhaps. That makes him slightly more of a team player, because he has to, you know, link up with other players rather than always look for the goal.
Yes, I think also that he played in the number 10 role, because that has made him that he comes a bit deeper in the pitch and having more possession. But also when he was named captain of the team, he has been taking more responsibility. He is more concerned about the young players and taking care of them, and he's been more like a team player. I think it was the same in Milan, because he was the only star in that team, and now he's come to Paris and he has shown his quality there. So I think he's more of a team player now than he was 2 or 3 years ago.
Right. Okay, thank you so much for joining us, Daniel. I'm a huge fan of Zlatan, so I hope he continues to perform for you. Do you have high hopes for the future for Sweden?
Yes, I have. We have Ireland in the next qualification game to the World Cup, so I think with the German game and the England game, so I think it will be a victory for Sweden.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for joining us, Daniel. We'll hope to speak to you soon. Let's move on to your country now, Germany, and of course they faced Holland in what was sort of a game that looked like just no one really cared. Was it? It's sort of like it was like a practice round. Let's just pass the ball around. I mean, we won't exert ourselves, but we'll try. I mean, there was of course huge, big players missing. In that there was no Wesley Sneijder, no Ozil. Blah, blah,
Percy,
blah.
Schweinsteiger, Khedira, Kroos, Ozil. Yeah.
But
you're
there
right.
was Royce.
There was Royce in a false nine. Well, him and Götze alternating in a false nine. And tactically, you could have said, the first half actually quite interesting. But as a spectacle, I have to tell you, it reminded me a little bit of my sort of teenage days in cinemas. I mean, two people just kind of fumbling around a little bit, but no side really.
That's
no
what you
side
did
really,
as your teenage years.
No side really desperate to score.
Okay, so you think this tells us nothing about the tactics going forward. And I would have thought that Joachim Löw needed to prove himself after what happened against Sweden.
Yeah.
He might have wanted to go out there and try to defeat Netherlands. Is this a case of looking after the German players ahead of the Champions League?
Well, I mean, that's certainly what Bayern did with pulling out two players and, one or two players from Madrid, of course. They're very much protecting their players, and Schalke and Dortmund had to kind of make up for that because they had everyone more or less called up. That's one thing. I mean, with Löw, people saw, I think, the game as a bit of a success for him, simply because he didn't get beat.
Kept a clean sheet.
He kept a clean sheet. He did the basics, were all right. I mean, Holland almost created no chance throughout 90 minutes. There was one from Robben and then one very good save.
I would argue and say that they actually had the better chances.
They had a better chances, but it was only 1.5. To Germany's sort of 3 kind of half chances. So I mean, that's the overall very low number of opportunities we're talking about. And Germany had a lot of possession. They controlled the game. The Dutch were very, very deep. Not necessarily in the terms of where they were defending, because the line was very high, but everyone was so far behind the ball. I mean, Robben was basically playing as a left back half of the time, and I've never seen him play so deep. And it didn't quite give the team the send-off for the calendar year in a positive mood like it did a year ago when they beat Holland 3-0 in a friendly at home. But it, I think, stopped a little bit the negative stories of the last couple of months with the 4-4 in Sweden, against Sweden, and before that the Argentina game where they were lost in the friendly. So that's gone. So in that small respect, it was a success. But yeah, overall,
a dull game.
A dull game, and Van Gaal, very unlike Van Gaal, put on a very, very defensive, negative Dutch side, and the big surprise was that. Well, maybe, but the big surprise was that Klaas-Jan Huntelaar, is one of the best strikers at the moment in Europe. He was on the bench and didn't even come on. I mean, that was very strange.
Well, maybe Schalke needs to preserve someone for themselves. Let's talk about Italy and France, which perhaps was a much more entertaining game. France, or actually, as one Italian paper put it, were playing a little bit like Italy. They were very effective. They weren't exactly beautiful, but the old style, they had these 2 defensive midfielders that Gazzetta called more like fridges, that were just more volume than they were quality. Which I thought was rather funny. Meanwhile, Italy was beautiful in the way that they were deployed, their usual football, Verratti playing in the middle. Do you think that despite the loss, the future looks quite good for an Italian side that can still play such beautiful football?
I'm not sure how beautiful they played. I mean, I didn't see the whole 90 minutes. From what I saw, I mean, as you said, France were more efficient and were more clinical in front of goal. I think Italy...
A bit more gritty and a bit too physical,
Italy were quite expensive, and they, were happy to go forward, but I wouldn't say that there was necessarily a beautiful performance from Italy. There is obviously a transition still going on. I mean, the likes of Verratti, where were they a few months ago? They were nowhere. They're just coming into the picture. El Shaarawy and Balotelli is a very new partnership at this level. So, it's shaping into a very decent Italy side, that's for sure. But, are they anywhere near Spain or Germany, despite what we saw in Europe? I don't think they are.
Well, we have an expression in Italy that says Germany always win unless they meet the Italians.
Yeah, well, that certainly was true at the Euros. But yes. I just don't. I think they're a good team. They're progressing. You can see that Prandelli has ideas, and you can see his ideas on the pitch, which is always the mark of a really good manager, that you see that the team is actually doing what he wants them to do. He gets that message across. Overall, though, the quality, I think, is still a little bit behind sort of the best teams in the world.
Okay, right. And then let's move on to just one more, Brazil versus Colombia. Now, there was a penalty that sort of, was skied. Yeah. And of course, I think Pablo Almero showed that, when it comes to top level football, he might not really have the experience necessary to really play that kind of professional type of football with his challengers that gave away that penalty. Neymar, should he move to Europe?
He will move to Europe. It's just a question of when. I think he'll stick around certainly until the summer, maybe another year, just to make sure that he'll be in peak condition when he arrives to the World Cup. I don't think he wants to necessarily have that big change in the run-up to the World Cup, because I think the Brazilians and he himself see this as his World Cup potentially. And the last thing you want to do is go to a big club and then find yourself on the bench, which could very easily happen at Real Madrid or even at Barcelona. So I think he's going to stay put and then move after the World Cup, where potentially as well, in financial terms, his stock could be higher than ever, because from now, at this stage, he is somebody who's sort of the people in the know are raving about, but the wide football public still have seen very little of him. When he does show up, for example, at the World Club Championships, he doesn't perform for Brazil. He's a little bit hot and cold. Yeah. So he'll be well advised to stick around a little bit longer. Well,
you see, this is the thing. I don't know whether you can look at this match against Colombia as sort of, the rising of Colombia, how far they are getting ahead, how talented their players are, i.e. Radamel Falcao. And they've got so much more. And of course, now that they actually have players who provide the service to Falcao that they didn't really have before, so they're getting the best out of their players. But is this also something that we should be disappointed in Brazil for not doing better? And they're a side that usually sort of defeat convincingly their opponent, and perhaps they no longer know how to do so.
I think there are some valid concerns about Brazil. I'm not so sure they were all represented in this particular game. I think there's a sort of a long-term problem for Brazil of having that killer touch, having that settled side that they haven't had. There's lots of players coming in and out at the fringes. I mean, the squad is, if you think about the Brazil squad, there's probably 40 players that are in contention, but very few out-and-out starters in the top 11. This is still a team that, since the World Cup,
has yet to find their rhythm.
2 years ago, you'd be very hard pushed to name who are the top 11 players in the side. Lots of experiments, managerial questions about ability as well, and they're decent, they're very good, and they'll be contenders, but they're not the finished article just yet.
Well, Brazil aren't the finished article, but we do have someone who is on the line next after the break, and that is, of course, Tancredi Palmieri filling us in. We'll see you in a few. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. Now we move on to Italy, and of course just a quick roundup of what happened in Serie A as we look ahead to two exciting fixtures coming up this weekend. But just to get sort of your reaction on the Rome derby, do you think, of course, it was a terrible moment for Daniele De Rossi. He literally just outright punched Stefano Mauri and was red carded. This is after he's been allowed to play in the position that he's so coveted under Zeman, in that sort of central midfield role. Regista is what we like to call it. But this is what it is. Is he really a Zeman player? He's not someone who makes his runs from midfield. He's not really a playmaker. There's no really position for him there.
Most players are not Zeman players. Certainly not in the long term. He takes so much out of them that after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, usually the players just hold their hand up and say, we can't anymore. I think it's worse than Mourinho, because I think Mourinho makes adjustments for human nature. I think Zeman is more like Bielsa, who in an ideal world would have robots playing for him that he can program exactly where they do, what they do, how much they run. And Roma traditionally, but also a couple of years ago, was a completely different side. So
of course,
there will be conflicts, and I'm not sure they can be resolved, which begs the interesting question if we'll see a future for De Rossi for the Giallorossi, or they have to go and apply straight somewhere else.
Will it be PSG or will it be City? We do have Tancredi Palmieri with us, all the way from England. you're 10 minutes down the road, I believe, Tank.
Actually, I'm literally behind the door of your studio.
We just can't go rid of you, can we?
If I raise the voice, you will hear the echo in the studio.
Tancredi, tell us, does Daniele De Rossi still have... now, I know Greco came out, and he came out and said that, you know, he really dislikes the way that Roma have handled the situation. It's as if they're making his sale easier for the fans because of, you know, sort of going against him, making him out a villain. He's now bound for the next, suspended for the next 3 matches.
Yeah.
Do you think that they're trying to do that to facilitate his sale?
No. If we talk like this, like there is a plan, a strategy in doing that, not at all. They didn't reject the Manchester City offer. Both of them, Daniele De Rossi first and then Roma, to then make this. That would be such a stupid plan. But what is happening is that the reality is that Daniele De Rossi didn't perform as was expected in this Roma. Daniele De Rossi, is the most paid player in Roma, and it's kind of wages that are quite a weight in the budget, in Roma budget. The thing is that after what happened, and let's remind that Zeman also didn't play him for some games. After what happened, they both are asking themselves, are questioning themselves. When I say they both, I mean Roma and I mean De Rossi. It is worth to stay here. You know, I thought about Rafa when I saw De Rossi being sent off, because I remember Rafa last season saying that he couldn't really understand why was so valued, De Rossi, and why he had that wages.
Is that true? Do you really don't understand why
we've
he's
had
so
this
valued?
debate in here, remember?
No, I don't remember.
Yeah.
You really don't get why he's so valued?
No.
Yeah, I remember that you said I can't understand why paying 6 million per year to Daniele De Rossi, and probably even someone at Roma is saying that. I can tell you, this morning there was a meeting between Daniele De Rossi and Franco Baldini, that we all know is the general director of Roma. Wouldn't be fair to say what that they decided, to find an exit strategy for him. It's not like that. But the management of Roma, Baldini, they are not happy with De Rossi performance all the way. De Rossi is not happy in the way like he's treated, like he's always almost always the responsible of the situation. So this meeting that was supposed to be a meeting of let's say of a way to find a way to be closer, to have a normal relationship like before. Didn't went in that way.
You're right. I just don't think that perhaps Roma is big enough for both of them at the same time. But I sort of want to give a bit of love to Lazio, because I think that, you know, people were so quick to talk about how Roma, you know, capitulate on the pitch and how their defense is so poor and so on and so forth. But then nobody talks about how technical and how gifted Lazio's midfield really is, and what Petkovic is doing for a side. They are so well balanced. They have a great playmaker in Hernandez, you know, a great finisher up front. So, you know, do you think that Petkovic's side deserves a little bit more love?
Yes, I mean, it was a comeback from Lazio. They were 1 goal down, and they didn't lost at all the control of the game or the control in mind. I mean, they stay together, and they completely deserve that. Of course, probably what makes difference in the consideration for Lazio is that it is true that what we are seeing so far of Lazio is so depending from Hernandez and from Miroslav Klose. I think there was a data, I think from the guys who scored, that Klose so far from the top 5 leagues in Europe is the player with the best conversion rate, 35% of conversion rate. It is fantastic, and especially is never failing in this kind of games. And this makes even more interesting the Juventus Lazio on Sunday, because Klose and Hernandez, they both rested this week. They didn't have to travel to play with Germany and Brazil, and so Lazio will be extremely fit and ready for that game.
Wow, he takes a breath.
Tank, how about Juventus? I mean, they bounced back obviously from the defeat against Inter, but they've got this really tricky game against Chelsea coming up. Do you think there's a danger that they might do what one or two other teams have done, certainly Dortmund, and just lose that bit of intensity in the league for this game because they're already thinking about the must-win game against Chelsea coming up?
Yeah, but just for this game, actually. Well, the best declaration about the chance of losing focusing is what happened in Pescara Juventus when Pirlo went deliberately to get another yellow card that made him suspended for the next game for Juventus Lazio in order that he could rest 1 week long until Chelsea. We have also to remind that after Juventus Chelsea there is Milan Juventus, but all the attention is over there. This Juventus-Chelsea is actually saying everything about the Antonio Conte's Juventus so far. Because yes, they won fantastically the league. Yes, they are leading this league and they are on the way to do a back-to-back. But if they go out in the group stage, well, we always say, yeah, but what happened in Europe? You didn't make it.
That is so unfair to judge Antonio Conte by this because, you know, like we saw...
It was like that.
Yeah, you're right, you know, but we saw Dortmund sort of struggle last season. We saw City struggle last season. It's, you know, this is what happens when new sides come together, and Juventus are essentially a new side in the Champions League. But I also want to, you know, talk to you a little bit about the reaction coming from France and Italy with regards to their friendly yesterday. And I know that with the Italians, they feel that they deserve to win. Would you say that that's right?
Let's say that they didn't deserve to lose. Let's say in this way, deserve to win would look like France didn't do anything to deserve it. Wasn't like that. It was a pretty equal game. L'Equipe and the Champ and in France they were pretty happy for what happened because we must remember that in spite of being France, they are coming from a year of crisis, and this result is coming after the draw that they picked in Spain at the last minute. But that was a 90-minute siege where they survived. This time they played equally at home with Italy. Also, Prandelli, that was pretty criticized, in my opinion, not fairly, pretty criticized during the group stage, the games of the group stage. This time, even in spite of losing, there was quite fair critics saying, okay, anyway, he's pulling in young players. The average yesterday of players age was pretty young, so losing 2-1, hitting twice the woodwork. Anyway, all the time trying to making the game. It's absolutely, this is the reason why you do this kind of friendly against big games, against big teams.
Tank, another story that's coming out of Italy is Wesley Sneijder not moving to Anshi Makhachkala. That's at least the version that Søren Lerby, his agent, is putting out there. I have a question for you. Even if he's not moving in January, even if he's not moving to Anshi, the underlying story, sort of behind the story, is that more relevant? Is there a sense that perhaps it would be in Inter's interest to get rid of him if a big offer came in, whether it's in January or whether it's in the summer?
I will try to put it short. First of
try.
I'll try. It's stupid to get rid of Sneijder when you have this Inter squad because it's not that there you have Ozil, it's not that there you have Di Maria, so you know you have some other option. For how good is going in this moment, the Stramaccioni tactics and his lineup, Wesley Sneijder is absolute top quality. So if you want to get rid of him, there is something that is honestly wrong in your planning. You have to get a very good bid to accept that, and I don't believe a very good bid will arrive for him, something like over 30 millions. In spite of all these thoughts about him, well, if you have €1 and you want to bet on him, just bet 100% on the fact that Sneijder will leave. Let's say 99% that Sneijder on next summer will leave.
Well, there is something about Italian clubs letting go of their best players, and that does remind me of Milan letting go of a certain Pirlo. But anyway, thank you for joining us, Tancredi. That's all we have time for on Italy. Join us after the break, where we'll discuss more in Europe. See you then. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm still joined by Rafa, and now we get to the part about Germany. And of course, there's all of this stuff going on about Lewandowski, whether he's going to stay, whether the fact his agent is dying for a move, is he trying to cash in on the player? Dortmund are upset about it. Manchester United no longer interested.
Well, one thing is for sure, his two agents are definitely trying to engineer a move. He himself seems
None of them are Mina Rzouki, right?
No, not yet. I'm sure he will get involved in some stage. He himself, I think it's also fair to say, is definitely toying with the idea, because it would, provide a very quick route to a very big wage increase. Dortmund have offered a lot of money. There's talk about 3 to 4, maybe 4.5 million euros, which is, very substantial. But he thinks that they might get 6 or 7 somewhere else. And he's very much in demand because he is almost a perfect, I would always say, non-striking striker, in the sense that, he can make every team that's so good when it comes to attacking midfielders link up. I mean, you put him, for example, in the Chelsea team, he would be absolutely sensational. You put him with United, he would provide a fantastic presence and focus point up front for someone like Rooney or Van Persie, just to play it a little bit deeper in the ideal position perhaps for them. He's a brilliant guy.
You're interesting you say that, because with United, you could say that they already have a finisher, but it's Chelsea, they don't really have a finisher, so why would they go for someone who is, again, another player who makes other players look good when they need someone who just bangs them in?
Yeah, you could make that argument that they need somebody who bangs them in, or you could say, why not go all the way? Why not say, okay, our whole game will be based on getting the attackers forwards, like Dortmund. I mean, Dortmund have all these fantastic guys playing just behind the striker, and it works beautifully. It's a very direct way, perhaps slightly more direct than the likes of Hazard and Oscar are playing at the moment, but it's definitely an avenue that they could play. Also, even if you think about Barcelona, I mean, the guy doesn't have to score. All he has to do is provide something different to a team that will score eventually. And he's probably the best right now in the world when it comes to holding up and linking the gameplay. That's why he's in such fantastic demand. But it's interesting what's going to happen. There was a feeling that United were really pushing with him and Kagawa to get them both in a sort of a package deal. Dortmund said no. He's still got a year and a half left on his contract. But of course, in the summer, if he doesn't extend, he will definitely be sold. And at the moment, it looks like he's just simply not willing to extend his contract. And now it's a bit of a cat and mouse game, because Dortmund are saying, well, show me your offers. Do you really have an offer from Man United? Do you really have an offer from Chelsea? Will Bayern really go for you now that they have so many striking opportunities? Or would you prefer, to stay with us, know what you have, etc.? And I think we'll see kind of solution of this, or resolution.
But does he really have these offers, or is it really just fanning the flames? Because, honestly speaking, I can't see where his right destination is, because Chelsea's being linked to Radamel Falcao.
Yeah, but he's not going to go there.
He's not going to go there, and he won't go there yet anyway. If he does end up there, you think he's going to go to Real Madrid?
Yes, I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, Falcao.
And I don't know. For me, I find Lewandowski is better for a team that actually has a finisher, so that he can bring the best out of them. But for example, if you are looking at teams like Juventus, who have a wonderful midfield, but perhaps no striker to put them forward, he's not the right choice.
It depends. I mean, look, he just changes the shift of your attack to the point where, at the moment, Juventus have this great midfield, and they have no striker. But this striker, or the one who is on the pitch, still gets chances and still is there. Replace him with someone who's actually much better in that position, and a team that's already functioning without the striker will function even better. So I don't think it's an argument to say they need necessarily a finisher. He will make every team better simply because what he does so well, and he does score goals as well. I mean, it's not like a guy who doesn't score. Well, I mean, if he doesn't sign a new deal, then he's got 1 year left on his contract. Then you have to look at his age. He's 24. You have to look at where he's coming from in terms of wages. And I think, Dortmund will at least try to get 20 million euros for him, even though he's only got 1 year left. And then, of course, they can create a bit of an auction. sign-on
20 million
fees as
doesn't
well.
sound like enough for Lewandowski when you consider, you know, Bilbao wanted 36 million for Llorente.
It's true, but they didn't get it, of course, and found themselves in all sorts of trouble. And
Sure.
you know, they've now have a player who's no use to them for
Sure.
half of the season. And interesting what will happen to him if he definitely goes to Juventus in January.
And Llorente, oh, we don't know. But there are now strong rumours linking him to Juventus. Sorry, Suarez to Juventus.
Suarez to Juventus.
There are some rumours, yeah, but
I don't think
that will happen now that
promise
City's
Liverpool
come
can't
out.
afford to. Liverpool can't afford to sell him. I mean, I can understand the interest in him. I can understand why City are exploring the opportunity, even though, you know, you need another bonkers striker in that mix-up. It's probably one too many already.
What if the player wants to leave, though?
Yeah, the player wants to leave,
Then
but
they
you
can-
still you can't sell your only striker. That
Yeah,
you
at the
have. I
moment,
mean,
he really genuinely is their only striker.
it's impossible.
So, but I want to talk about, forgetting all of that, Bayern Munich. Now, you know, they won 2-0, which of course they would, because they just seem to win everything when they're playing in the domestic league now, except for one game. But it wasn't so easy. It was almost like something had to be said about Eintracht, because they were just amazing when they were playing them. And they keep building and building, and they were saying that they have the likes of Freiburg as sort of an example, little money, a budget of 20 million,
Yeah.
but they're still coming out so strong. Their right back was called up for the national team. Is this
Yeah.
a side that we're going to have to start looking out for once again?
They're not at the level of the early 90s where they had sort of the Yeboahs and Andy Möllers and Uwe Beins. You know, they called them Football 2000 at the time because they were playing a kind of game that was so beautiful to see and so attacking and fresh. And they got within a whimper of winning the title then. This team won't win the title. I don't think they will qualify for the Champions League. But, you know, for a newly promoted team to be still third after a third of the games gone, or nearly a third, is some kind of achievement, and they haven't fluked it. They have gone there by playing a great transition game, playing, you can't even say if they're defensive or attacking, because what they do is just, they make the right decisions. When they're in attack, in possession, they flood forward and they score great goals, and when they defend with class and with intelligence, and impossible to say that they are defensive or offensive. They're just very good at adapting to what the situation demands of them. And at Bayern, they played a very high line. It really was a courageous performance, because usually teams just try to play as deep as possible.
Yeah.
It didn't work, as you said. They were beaten 2-0, but you kind of expect that. And the performance was such that they went out this game saying, actually, this shows, the way we played, this shows that we are there for a reason so far high up the league. We are actually a pretty good side.
Yeah.
Can they keep it together? You know, can they keep the likes of Jung, the likes of Rode, who's already creating a lot of interest? I mean, he wasn't called up, Sebastian Rode, but he's probably the outstanding sort of young prospect. Unfortunately, he's a holding midfielder, and Germany have about 100 of them who are very, very good.
Gosh, they should give one out to City then.
Yeah, maybe. But he's a great player.
What is it with that team and people called Sebastian?
Yeah, I don't know.
But tell me
they're
about
a great
Bayern.
side. They're a great side.
Bayern, is Javi Martinez doing as well as expected?
It depends what you expect of him. I mean, when he came in for 40 million euros, everyone made the point that he's not going to do the obvious stuff. They'll have people sort of standing up and giving him a standing applause and standing ovations, because he does the little stuff. He does things like winning the ball, plugging gaps, being in the right position all the time. A lot of money for that kind of player, but that's what Bayern needed, so maybe it's money well spent.
So it is money well spent. They'll win the league, you think?
They'll definitely win the league.
Oh,
Yes.
well, Dortmund is stuttering. But do join us after the break, where we start looking ahead to the Champions League fixtures next week. See you in a bit. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. And I'm still your host, Mina Rzouki. Now we're moving on to the Champions League preview. You always look at me in that way. That's just sort of...
Because I know that you are already shivering and that you'll be on your sofa and looking at the game between your hands.
Actually, I'll be here doing the show. But it's scary. It's Juventus versus Chelsea.
But I don't understand what you promised. I mean, Europa League is a very attractive competition, and you should take pride in perhaps going all the way. No?
Really, it's the last thing that you were supposed to tell me, because This
So
is
nervous,
a must-win game for Juventus, who are obviously on 6 points, and then good old Chelsea are on 7. Now, if they just get 4, Juventus, then they can qualify. So I'm not sure why we're already ringing the bell for the Europa League.
They can, but they really, as you said, it is a must-win game.
So what are you thinking? It's impossible to do against Chelsea?
No, not at all. I think they can beat Chelsea. I think Chelsea are far from the finished product. I think they've done as well as they could have done, as well as people, have expected, or perhaps even better. With this transition period, I think Di Matteo has really done very well to take one team who's playing one way, to change it completely to 180 degrees, and now they're playing a very different way. And if you take that into account, their results have been pretty good. Where they have struggled a little bit is the Champions League, because they've come up against a very, very good Shakhtar side, and they're in with Juventus, who will cause most of teams problems. So it's a tough occasion.
How do you see it panning out now? I mean, this is again another side that doesn't have their, Juventus don't have their coach next to them, who's there sort of, getting them to push forward.
Yeah, but Chelsea don't have their coach either in John Terry. No, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. No, he's not their coach. He doesn't run Chelsea, as Bruce Buck has told us this week. No, but I mean, seriously now, the fact, for example, that Ashley Cole, I'm not sure how ready he is to come back for that game. You could see when he's not there, with the attacking setup that they have, Eden Hazard is not very good at tracking back. Suddenly, poor Ryan Bertrand finds himself up against all these really good players, and he struggles, as you'd expect him to. And David Luiz is brilliant, but also not very brilliant, both at the same time, or sometimes in the very same minute. Very difficult to predict what David Luiz will turn up. So I think Juventus have a great chance here, but they must take it because the draw won't be enough.
Okay, well, perhaps. I mean, but then it's not really about creating chances with Juve. I mean, they created 30 or so against Norton, and it's just a question of whether or not they'll be able to convert.
Yeah, who will lead the line for Juventus?
I don't really know, but I
you don't want to know, rather.
Right, that's probably more accurate. Vucinic I expect to be there, but God knows. He likes to rile himself up for big games. But let's talk about Valencia-Bayern, which is the other big game on Tuesday night. And now that Valencia have actually started to perform as we once expected them to, they did a marvellous job in their last outing against, was it Cluj? Bate Borisov, that's it. I always get them confused. And
they're so similar.
They're so not similar. Anyway, the Belarusians. Anyway, but they're starting to do a very good job under their new coach. They've started to pick up the points in the league. But Bayern are unstoppable, even though they suffered against Bate too. Do you think that's a case of they won't really, will they really try in this match, or will they be a bit complacent, Bayern?
I don't think they'll be complacent, because the way the group is shaping up, they need at least a point to make sure that they can go on to win the group. And I think that is very important, because you don't want to play Barcelona necessarily in the next round. I think it does make a difference.
Or Celtic, if the way things are going.
Yeah, it does make a difference. I mean, look, if Real Madrid finished second and Barcelona finished second, and there's an argument of saying finishing first is probably worse, and maybe then the last game against Bate Borisov, they'll take the draw at home to let Valencia win the group. No, but I think at this stage they have to get the draw. Ideally, they need the win to make absolutely sure they're going to win the group, which is very much at the objective. And it'd be interesting to see what Valencia do, because in Munich they were very, very defensive. They waited for that 1 or 2 chances. I think they created 1.5 chances very, very late on. I mean, Bayern were already 2-0 up before they really started playing, which is a little bit too late. Valencia, and I think they're going to give it more of a go. But the problem is with Bayern, that defensive strategy sooner or later doesn't really work, because they have now so much quality that they find a way through. And there's even a chance, an outside chance, that Mario Gomez might be back for that game. And he hails from, his dad hails from an area not far from Valencia, so it'd be a great game for him to come back.
Well, the great striker. I don't think they'll be too defensive this time, because I think, they had to sort of go back to basics at the start, because they kept losing so much. They had to sort of, learn how to defend before anything. But let's move on to another German team, and they're facing Ajax. Now, I know that sort of Ajax has been thrilling against City, but they're sort of looked at as the whipping boys of that group.
Everyone looks thrilling against City, though.
Evidently so, you're right.
In the Champions League.
But they do have 5 new players. They did sell 2 of their best ones. Went last season, and they're constantly trying to rebuild.
And they caused Dortmund a lot of problems in the first game of this campaign. Dortmund won 1-0, at home, but they really, really struggled. Lewandowski rescued them that night with a great goal just before the end of the game. And I think they have a lot of respect for the way Ajax play. And Ajax, I think, also there's a difference here, because I think City and Real Madrid, even though they will deny it, I think still underestimated Dortmund to a certain extent. I think they still were surprised on the night, but just how Dortmund played. Ajax has already played against them, and also being Dutch, are much more exposed to Dortmund and to the Bundesliga. I think they know they will figure out a way to deal with them better. So I think it will be very, very tough for Dortmund, but they can get the draw, which will probably be enough to get through. Of course, then depending on what happens in Real Madrid City, then the decision might be postponed until they play City at home in the last game in December.
But no way that Ajax can qualify.
There is a way, but they need to win if they want, and then of course they've got an away game at Real Madrid to finish things off. So it's a tough spot to be in.
Well, they can be in the Europa League then, perhaps with either Chelsea or Juventus, so it's not too bad for the Dutch side. Because Man City versus Real Madrid, I mean, are they going to end up even in third place with the way that they're going? And of course, you know, is Mancini, that's the question that's always asked, is he good enough to lead a side in the Champions League? And will Real Madrid even finish this group as number one?
Well, I mean, we'll know a lot more about how these two games go. Dortmund really need to win this to make sure that they can win the group, because you know it's very tough for them, and Real Madrid need to win to make sure that they get out the group. I think for City,
so by the sounds of it, you think Dortmund will go as winners of this group?
No, not necessarily. I think that Real Madrid have a very big incentive to win this game, because they need to make absolutely sure they qualify. I think for Dortmund, it's almost that point of they can make sure that they win the group if they won, and a draw will probably be okay for them. Real Madrid will want to win here, I'm pretty sure.
Can they?
Yeah, of course they can. I mean, City at home, domestically, are a real immovable force. They don't lose games. At home in Europe, it's a very different thing. Yes, the results were okay-ish, a draw and were two draws, one against Ajax and one against Dortmund, but the performances were very, very poor. And if they play anything like that against Real Madrid at home, they get beaten quite heavily.
So, just a quick one. Do you think Manchester City will finish fourth in the group?
I think they will still finish third, but they'll go out.
But they'll go out. So it looks like it will be Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund that will qualify out of their group. What's happening to Man City? Do join us next week when we will review all the games in the Champions League, and also look at what's happening in the domestic ones. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Rafa. We'll see you next time. Same football chat, same place. See you then.